the last Friday episode of the Bleav in Mets podcast before there is actual baseball to be played. Welcome into another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie here with you. It is Friday vibes. I'm out of breath. This is the last Friday show before we have actual baseball. We're hyped. Brett Baty's awesome. Clay Holmes is also awesome. Jack, how are you, my friend?
It's a great Friday when it's the last Friday before opening day, and there is a lot to be excited about, given what we saw today with the Mets playing the Cardinals and all of the highlights to come out of that game. But speaking of highlights, Chris,
Okay.
if you like video highlights of this podcast, if you prefer to watch the video version of podcasts, you can check out this one over on youtube.com. It is Jack McKessie is the channel. My name, McKessy. And we have a video version of every single episode of the podcast that we've recorded so far. This is episode 45, Chris, and we are closing ever closer to the start of the 2025 season.
I'm just seeing a tweet that has entered my timeline that is the cover of Sports Illustrated, and it has all the Mets on it. It is Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Lindor, Minaya, Vientos, Edwin Diaz, Brendan Nimmo. I am ready to run through a wall for this baseball season. You may be ready to run through a wall because it is March and there is basketball on. BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you are a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline, your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball. There's a $200,000 bracket contest that you're hopefully involved in. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered. Odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Clay Holmes started today for the New York Metropolitans in his last spring start before he will take the bump on opening day for the New York Mets. I will tell you, my father, first time ever in spring training, is sending me pictures of being at Port St. Lucie. I texted him. I said, give me the old man breakdown of Clay Holmes. I'm going to read verbatim the text I got back from a man in his 50s, not a baseball savant by any stretch of the imagination. This is what I got. Doesn't throw hard, but has great stuff. That's it. There's the scouting report on Clay Holmes. The kick change was on fire once again. TJ Stats, friend of the program, without knowing he's a friend of the program, referred to Clay Holmes as an ace waiting to break out. Clay Holmes capping off a fantastic spring in which he had a sub-1 ERA this spring. Clay Holmes, your opening day starter.
I mean, your dad kind of nailed it. Doesn't throw super hard. He's come down from his ways as a reliever and closer. He's not going to be pumping in 99-mile-an-hour fastballs, but what he is going to do is generate ridiculous levels of whiffs with his kick changeup. Apparently, according to our guy TJ Stats, 71.4% whiff rate on that kick change today. We saw a few highlights on Twitter of what those strikeouts look like. If you're a pitching ninja follower, you probably saw it as well. That thing is absurd, Chris. I cannot wait to see that in regular season action. I also texted my father during and after this game.
Okay.
He just texted me LFGM after the score went final.
Love that.
I said, Baty and Holmes look ready. And he said, yes, I'm bullish on Clay. So,
wow.
Looking
bullish
like
on Clay Holmes. I mean, how could you not be? He's the opening day starter. Hashtag our ace until Showman I comes back.
Everything I've seen about Clay Holmes and every outing he's had so far in spring is getting me a little bit more hyped. The opening day starter announcement was, I thought, peak hype. And then he went out through 5 1/3 innings in less than 90 pitches, which is, for one, a great sign. Struck out 6 today.
No. How dare you? He struck out 8 today.
Sorry, he struck out 8 today.
Please.
In 5 1/3 innings. He finishes his spring training with a 0.93 ERA and 5 starts, 19 1/3 innings pitched, 23 strikeouts, and a 0.78 whip. Chris, is that good?
It is not bad. It is pretty good for Clay Holmes. And look, there's a lot of buzz around Juan Soto. There's a lot of buzz over a full season of Mark Vientos and Lindor still being here and Shaw Minaya being back. And there's buzz all across the board. But there's nothing like those stories that come out of nowhere that get you excited. And I'm sorry, but Clay Holmes is one of those stories. When Clay Holmes was signed here, we were on board with the idea, right? This was a pro Jeff Hoffman podcast to sign him as this reliever that you're going to convert into a starter. So we were on board with the methodology, but it's just an idea. It's just a thought. You don't know how it's going to work until you get out here in the spring. And listen, we're going to get to regular season and we're going to see if these spring stats were all fluff or if there was some real meaningful under the hood stuff that was done by Clay Holmes to make him this effective starter. But you kind of get on board with these under the radar stories. And the two guys that we're going to talk about here today on the pod, and we've talked a lot about Clay Holmes recently, these are guys that came out of nowhere. Like, I'd never expected us to be this excited about Clay Holmes making his start. Whether or not he was the opening day starter, if he pitched in the 2 spot or the 3 spot, I would still be just as excited. I'm ready to see Clay Holmes pitch in a big league game that matters. Like, and I didn't think I was going to be at that place when they signed him in October. Shout out to them. Shout out to David Stearns for identifying this guy as the target for this. Shout out to Jeremy Hefner and the pitching lab for doing all of this. I mean, he threw 6 different pitches today: sinker, sweeper, changeup, slider, cutter, and then he threw in 1 4-seam fastball. So you got your cutter and your sinker for your fastball, and then you have a slider, a change, the kick change, and a sweeper. You can throw breaking pitches to both sides of the plate. I mean, it is an arsenal of a number 1 frontline starter, and that if that kick change is for real, if it's as advertised, I think he's going to be a weapon. And sign me up for 5 1/3, 2 hits, no earned runs, 8 strikeouts, 3 walks on 88 pitches every single time out for Clay Holmes. If that's the Clay Holmes we get every time out, I'm more than happy with what the Mets have in Clay Holmes as a starter.
I can't emphasize enough how good that efficiency is in terms of not just Clay Holmes, but also like Mets pitchers recently in recent years. Before about the halfway point last year when Sean Manaea figured out his new arm slot and abilities as a pitcher, there were a lot of times in 2023 and 2024 where the Mets were held back by the lack of depth they were getting from their starters. Pitchers were not pitching into the 6th inning at a consistent level at all. And to see Clay Holmes, who again is a former reliever that the Mets are trying to convert into a starter, to see him be able to go out there.
Former closer. Like,
right.
This is a 9th inning guy, last 3 outs, game on the line. We're going to Clay Holmes, and he's a ground ball machine, and the Yankees and soft contact. And like, they removed him out of the closer's role because he was giving up a ton of soft contact that the Yankees defense couldn't do anything with.
Right. It's not like Clay Holmes was a long reliever or middle innings guy that the Mets were like, oh, but he was a failed starter and maybe we can turn something back. No, he was a closer that they're turning into a starter. He's able to shift his approach and get out there with 6 ups today and pitch through the whole thing efficiently, limit the walks, 8 strikeouts, being able to do 5 1/3 and 88 pitches. I'm sure he had a pitch limit of around 90 for today before opening day. He's stretched out, Chris. He's ready to go. I am amped. I think opening day is going to be a great immediate display of what he can kind of do against a righty heavy lineup that the Astros have, with that kick change, with that beautiful long repertoire that he's going to put to use very quickly. And if spring is any indication, like the potential of him taking over our A status and holding that mantle until Sean Manaea gets back, it's easy to see that he's going to be able to do that.
Here's what I find so fascinating about Clay Holmes and where we're at with him on the eve of the season. When you make a move like this, I think the immediate concern is, will he be able to give you length? Will he be able to go 5 innings regularly? And here we are at the end of spring training, and that's not a question mark for me. Like, I'm not worried about his ability to go deep into games. Is he going to go into the 8th inning on a regular basis? No. Is he going to go into the 7th inning on a regular basis? No, probably not. I think Clay Holmes is going to max out as probably a 6-inning guy on his best day, but that 3 months ago wasn't a guarantee. When they signed him, you didn't know if this was going to work out. Remember, what did everybody say? Oh, if it doesn't work out and he can't give them the length, they've got a $12 million reliever. They'll just put him in the bullpen. He'll be a high leverage arm. Is anybody questioning the idea of moving Clay Holmes back to the bullpen? Are those words that have been uttered by anybody with any level of seriousness this spring. No, it's Clay Holmes just keeps moving up the Mets starting pitching depth chart, one, because of injuries, but two, because he's been their best pitcher this spring. Like, it is insane to think. I sent you the TJ Stats graphic today about Clay Holmes, and you responded to me. Imagine having this in front of you in October and saying that this was a reality. And it's true. Like, we have been through so much in these 3 months with Clay Holmes that it's a totally different conversation than it was in November, December, October when they signed him, to now where it's all those question marks that we had. Maybe in the back of your mind, you still have them, but he has erased every single doubt that we had about his ability to add more pitches, his ability to have length. Every single start, he's grown and grown and grown. And truthfully, Jack, has he hit a wall? Was there sometimes you have that start where you hit a wall, right? And then you break through in the next start. He didn't hit a wall. He just got better and better and better and better. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I was super concerned about is with this increased workload, something tightening up, like a hamstring tightening up, or just having an injury because he's not used to doing this. That hasn't been a concern at all. So from the Mets' perspective and for Clay Holmes' perspective, and this is not a word we use very often in baseball, it has been a perfect spring. Like, it has been perfect. It has gone exactly the way that they wanted it to. And Clay Holmes has been one of the best stories of the spring for the New York Mets. Maybe a close second or a 1A is our Grapefruit League MVP, that being the guy who leads the Grapefruit League in OPS, our opening day second baseman. We think potentially Brett Baty.
Brett Baty. I mean, we talk about Clay Holmes and what a great final outing he had in spring. 5 1/3 innings, 8 strikeouts. Everything looks excellent from the pitching side of things. For all the questions that we felt like we might have had about Clay Holmes seem to have been answered. This might not be true, but I'm going to say it for hyperbole purposes.
Okay, I love it.
The only player that might have had more question marks about what they would be able to bring to the 2025 New York Mets than Clay Holmes was Brett Baty, because at the start of everything, at the start of spring training, when everyone showed up, we knew that Mark Vientos, well, the Pete Alonso thing hadn't been fully solved, but when that got solved, we knew Mark Vientos was going to play third base. We knew Francisco Lindor was going to play short. We knew Jeff McNeil was probably going to be the second baseman, and we knew Pete Alonso was going to play first. That left really no spots for Brett Baty. If you also include the Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor in center field, the Brandon Nimmo in left field, and Juan Soto playing right field, outside of like a maybe DH role, it was really up to Brett Baty to prove that he belonged to the 2025 roster. Now, a few things have broken his way, for better, for worse, for other players. Jeff McNeil had the injury to his oblique, so he's going to be out for opening day. Obviously, the Pete Alonso situation helped figure out that Mark Vientos was going to be at third base, which let him kind of work harder at developing as a second baseman and to get that versatility required to be able to play with the major league roster. And then the other questions were, well, if he doesn't have a spot, or if he did have a spot, what is his bat going to look like? Because that was something that he struggled with last year, was a lot of balls on the ground, a lot of lucky hits to start the season, and then that kind of went away and ended up in him getting demoted to AAA. How is his bat going to develop over the course of this offseason and in his time in AAA last year? And so far, Chris, the results have been very, very promising. He has 3 home runs in Grapefruit League play, 3 doubles, and as you mentioned at the start, he leads the league in all of the Florida teams at spring training right now in OPS with 1.123. So the bat's there. There seems to be a spot for him at second base because of McNeil's injury. He's looked more and more comfortable. He turned a really nice double play with Francisco Lindor the other day as well. So he's answering all the questions that I had, just like Clay Holmes has answered all the questions, turning from a reliever, a closer, to a starter. Brett Baty turning from a third baseman with a fringe bubble position on the roster, looks like a bona fide second baseman and ready to start opening day.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have him on my 26-man projection when we did it a couple of weeks ago because I had Jeff McNeil at the time being the starting second baseman. And look, let's face it, if you're going to be a bench player at the big league level, you need to have at least one desirable skill. And the problem with Brett was, I don't love his defense. Even at third base, I don't love his defense. So he's not a defensive replacement late in games for me that provides value. He doesn't bring the speed element that Luis Angel Acuna brings, right? He's not the best hitter overall. His bat has been a question mark, so it's not like I have this Swiss Army knife lefty bat off the bench that I can use late in games. He just didn't have that one skill that made me think he made sense. Acuna can come in and play defense at second, at short, at third. He provides speed if you need a pinch runner late in games. Like, there's a skill set there to where the trade-off of him not getting regular at-bats in the minor leagues, he is providing me value at the big league level. I just didn't see it. It didn't add up with Brett Baty. Two things happened. Jeff McNeil got hurt, which opened up the avenue for second base. And secondly, and I think this is more important than anything else, Brett Baty found his bat this spring. He has shown marketed improvement with his swing, with his ability to lift the ball into the air and drive the ball with some velo that allows him to be somebody who you can count on and put into your lineup every day. Again, will it translate to the regular season when it starts? Well, the proof's going to be in the pudding because he's going to play. I think there's going to be a platoon at second base, and he's going to play against righties, and Acuna will play against the lefties. But he has earned this opportunity. He got a little luck in the form of the Jeff McNeil injury. But even if McNeil didn't get hurt, the way his bat played, he was going to force the Mets to make a really tough decision between himself and Luis Angel Acuna. And because of the injury to Jeff McNeil, they don't really have to make that decision. Both of those guys are going to play. But it's exciting. Like, if Vientos and Baty both become productive big league players, like, that's a good thing for the New York Mets. It's a boom for them to have both of those guys contributing at the big league level. We don't have a lot for you here, right? This was a very quick, short episode. We wanted to talk about the last spring start for Clay Holmes and how good Brett Baty has been, but we do want to spend the last minute or two here, a little bit of a programming note, because next week starts the season, so these episodes are going to change a little bit. We can promise you a Monday episode, and we plan on giving our predictions for the New York Mets in 2025. Jack and I will both give you our record prediction, where the team stands in the division. Maybe we'll do just MLB predictions in general. We'll give out our team MVP, our team Cy Young, our team Silver Slugger, and then we'll do the awards for the league as well, so we can have our predictions on record and see how smart or dumb we are. That's going to come to you on Monday. And then after that, you'll have to adjust your listening habits just a bit. You will get every Bleav in Mets episode at the conclusion of a series. So after the Mets get done playing Houston, we'll recap everything that happened, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then we'll get you set for the next team that is in town. And that's how things will go all the way through, hopefully, the end of the year, when there is a celebratory parade for the New York Mets, hoisting up the Commissioner's Trophy and being World Series champions. That's the hope, that we keep doing episodes all throughout the playoffs. But that is the plan for us moving forward. So if you want to make sure that you know exactly when these episodes drop, make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening to your podcast. If you happen to be a YouTube viewer of the program on Jack McKessie's YouTube channel, MCKESSY, subscribe over there and then turn on that notification bell so you are notified once a new episode's drop over there. But that's going to do it for us here on this brief edition of the program. We got predictions next week, and we have actual baseball to break down next week as well. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday for predictions week. And as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.